Good morning, and glad to see that you guys are finishing up your midterms. We have an easy week in terms of chapter 6, and look forward to seeing you guys on Thursday. I apologize for the late posting of this study guide. I had a death in the family this week, but I'm getting it now, and so we do have an easy week. And the things I want you to do, carefully read through Full of Love, chapter 6. There's some leftover things that we'll need to look at. It's pretty straightforward. He does a great job, and so just read through that and you'll be in good shape. As always, we want to prepare for the final exam, and so do review vocabulary 1 to 125. There is a YouTube video of that now, and there is a PowerPoint. I'll try to hyperlink it before I post this. Make sure you can write out the paradigms. I know you did it for the midterm, but make sure you can write out the paradigms for the masculine, singular, dual, and plural, feminine, singular, dual, and plural. Make sure you can write out the call imperfect, the call perfect. And then what we're going to do today is look at the new vocabulary. And if you don't mind, I think we'll just use this PowerPoint to study our, and so here we have that. So Dom is, matter of fact, I think I'll just do this in the actual PowerPoint. I think it will be better. I meant to have this up, so we are looking at 126 from 150. We're going to do through 250 by the time we end, so these are the most important words. Dom is the word blood. My mnemonic device is in the New Testament, the field where Judas ended up falling, hung, and his bowels gushed out, is called Akeldama in Aramaic, and that Dhamma part of the word is actually related to this word, Dom, blood, field of blood. So I don't know if that helps you. That's my strange mnemonic device. Dom is blood. Makom is place. My mnemonic device is there's a place in Mississippi called Macomb, Mississippi. I think it's actually the place where Leonard Skinner's plane crashed. I don't know if that helps you at all, but Macomb is place. Ahmad is stand, and it can mean take a stand, stand still, stand up. Ahmad. Yalad is beget or bring forth. The noun version of this is yeled. There was no yeled to Sarah. Most people relate yeled to a woman yells when she has a baby. So if you can get yeled, yalad is simply the verb form of that. Aharon. So remember, there are no capital letters in Hebrew, so this is actually just the word Aaron. Aharon. Jacob, you can probably hear that as Jacob. You probably read enough Hebrew to realize that this looks like it's a verb. And one way to do the verb, akav, is related to the word heel. So Jacob could be heel holder. Another way to do it would be related to the word deceive. And so Jacob could be like deceiving or lying. Now, I know many people in English are married, are named Jacob, and that meaning of the word isn't married to the English version, so it doesn't mean that in English, but in terms of Hebrew, that's what it meant. I wonder if in the story, you have Jacob grabbing the heel, and so he heals. Jacob deceiving, and Esau actually brings that meaning forward. He says, isn't he a deceiver? Isn't his name Jacob? Notice that God changes Jacob's name from Jacob to Yisrael, the man who wrestles with God and overcomes. And I wonder in the meta-narrative if that isn't ultimately a picture of Jesus, who truly can wrestle with God and overcome because he is God and he shares the essence of God, and his will in terms of his divine nature is identical with the will of God the Father and God the Spirit. So Jacob, I think, is a picture related to the ultimate picture of Jesus as the perfect Israel. And Jacob is redeemed. So even though the name may mean bad things, ultimately it's good. Peh is mouth or opening. I'm not sure a mnemonic device for that. I think I just had to memorize it. Peh, mouth or opening. O is or. Adon is Lord. Now we know Adonai, which is the replacement for the tetragrammaton, and literally that means my lords. That suffixal ending is the plural, my lords. Adoni, we're familiar with my lord, so here yod is the singular, my lord. Patah yod is my lords, and then comments yod is the replacement for the tetragrammaton, all related to this word Adon, Lord. Shamar is to guard or keep. In biblical theology, the shamar is important because Adam, and then by implication Adam and Eve, because Eve is his helper, are to avad and shamar the Garden of Eden, to guard and keep it, to guard and work it. Now, what's interesting about that is that's exactly what the Levites are to do to the tabernacle. They're to guard and keep it. And so Adam and then Adam's helper, Eve, are to guard and keep. So ultimately, in the restored garden, you do have the new Eve helping to guard, but she never is the priest. Adam is the priest, but she is helping her husband. And so the meta-narrative story is the woman was to guard and keep as she helped Adam in Eden. Her exclusion from the priesthood and from the eldership is to point to the fact that the time of the consummation has not come. But ultimately, the new Eve, as she loves her husband, will guard and keep the new Eden in heaven, where no foul thing will ever enter and the gates are open. And so this shamar and avad is related to that, and it helps us with the meta-narrative. Matzah is find. You may know that the night before you celebrate the Passover, you search out the chametz, and you burn it the next day before you celebrate Passover. I don't even know how that relates, but somehow finding that yeast or finding the fermented thing and matzah it helps me remember this word is find. That's a almost nonsensical mnemonic device, but it's mine. Lave is heart. We know from Ezekiel 36 that God will give us a lave hadashah, a new heart, a living heart, a real heart, a lave basar, a truly untainted flesh heart, related to this word. Kesef is silver. Nagad is an interesting word. It means to make known or tell. I don't know what my mnemonic device for this. I think I just had to memorize it, but it does appear frequently, so it's an important word. Eleph means thousand. I don't know. Alabama has 1,000 winds, it seems like these days, and they're elephants. I don't know if that will help you. I think I just memorized this word as 1,000. It does appear a lot in the Hebrew Bible, and so it's well worth memorizing. Ohel is tent. There are funny things that are related to this word. Of course, it's the tent of God, and then it's personal tents. And there's a Kathiv Kareh issue in the written text. Kathiv is what's written, and Kareh is what you should read. Often this word will be written her tent, and for some reason it's changed to his tent when they point it, and they're saying don't read her tent, read his tent. I'm not sure what that's about. It seems strange. Some of the stories that do that, so-and-so went into her tent, and it should be his tent. I think in the Noah story, there's a Kathiv Kareh about that, but it's all related to this word, ohel. And so it's a word you want to memorize, and that whole Kathiv Kareh thing, the scribes are so careful about not correcting the text, even places where they believe the text is in error. They simply will point it differently, and that's Kareh reading. They won't change the written text, the Kathiv. So I'll show you that in the margin there's a little notation that they do, and so in the margin they'll actually put the word that they believe that you should read. Of course, the Tetragrammaton is the most famous Kathiv Kareh, where they're telling you the word YHWH is written, but read it as Adonai. There are 18 places, 17 or 18 places called the Tikkunei Soparim, where the scribes admit that they've changed the written text, but it's places where you have things like so-and-so cursed God, and they don't want you to read that out loud as you're reading the Hebrew text, so they actually changed that to say so-and-so blessed God. But they admit and mark in the text that these are I think it's 17 places where they've made intentional changes, and they call that the Tikkunei Soparim, the corrections of the scribes. And this is one place where you possibly have a thing when it terms the ending of the word, and the suffixial ending is it his tent or her tent. But for now, we just need to memorize that the word means tent. Mishpat appears everywhere. It appears in Ezekiel 36, I believe, when my judgments, you'll walk in my judgments, my ways, my commandments. Shaphat is actually, shaphat is actually the verb to judge. So often you'll have a mem with a hierarch, and it'll turn it into the noun version of whatever the verb is. So this is just the word judgment. So decree, edict, judgment. It's what a shofet, what a judge does. Saviv is roundabout. This is a geminate noun. The last two letters are the same. We'll talk more about that on Thursday. Mishpachach. This is a strange little word. The most famous place it appears is in Genesis 12, where God says, I'll bless the one who blesses you and curse the one who curses you, and through you all the mishpachoth, and it's usually translated families of the earth will be blessed. The definition that Logos gives is clan. In terms of biblical theology, that probably has to do with the 70 nations that have been listed in the previous two chapters. And so you have these 70 clans, 70 groups of people, and God says all of them will be blessed through Abraham. And it raises attention in this story because you've had the Canaanite curse, and the Canaanites make up a big chunk of that 70 nation group. And so how does God overcome the Canaanite curse? And the whole Bible is the answer to that. Ultimately, Jesus, by taking the Canaanite curse to himself, and like the Canaanite king, he perishes on a tree, put into a cave, rock over its mouth, just like the Canaanite kings were, but he is not there to this day. And that's how he can bless the Canaanite woman and her demon-possessed daughter, because through Abraham, all the mishpachoth, all the clans, all the families, all the nations of the world will be blessed. Pakad, a strange little word, it means visit, and it can be like visit evil upon someone. So you have a nation who does something and God will visit that. It can mean appoint, and it can mean muster troops. All that's related to the semantic domain of the word pakad. And so it's a word that you have to see in context. But if you start off with visit, and then when you get to the places, you realize you have to modify that slightly in English. Pakad. Navi is prophet. Paro, you can hear the word Pharaoh in that. Sadeh, we know from Genesis 1, the beast of the field, the plants of the field. Zahav is gold. Karav is to bring near or come near. And that's the 25 words we have. So that's the most important thing that we need to take away from Study Guide 6, Week 6, is get those down. And you can see these are being used 300 times in the text. So it's important that you really get these words down. They'll pay you back so much if you learn these words well. Now, we have some leftovers, segulate nouns. Basic rule is segulate nouns do funny things in the text. So there's kind of a normal way that nouns operate, and segulates are slightly different in that. It's related to the fact that they're accented on the first syllable instead of the last syllable. And they have short vowels instead of a long vowel. You don't have to know the technical ins and outs of that. Just tell yourself that segulates are slightly strange. And when we come to construct nouns, we'll see that in construct, in the construct singular, segulates don't change. Most other nouns change slightly in the construct state, and so segulates are slightly weird. That's what you need to know. There are a handful of other weird nouns, geminates, where the last consonants are doubled in the plural. They're geminate nouns, geminate verbs. That's all you need to know, really. Read through Full of Love, you'll get it. And there are irregular plurals where, you have a word that's a masculine word and its plural looks feminine, or vice versa. So just tell yourself there are some words that do slightly funny things. Two types of preposition we've already seen. There are some that are attached to the word, like le, bo, me. Some that aren't, like men, men is the most famous one. A handful of others, you'll see them in the text. All right. And then lastly, we'll look at the translation of Genesis 1 to 10. So I'm going to take a break and we'll come back and we'll do our exegetical outline. So the exegetical outline for us is going to be great today. I'm really excited about going through this translation. I like to do exegetical outlines because they help me see the grammar. Maybe it will help you see the grammar as well. Bereshit, in the beginning, bara Elohim, God created. In the beginning, God created. What did he create? He created et hashamayim va'et ha'aretz. So he created two things. Definite direct object marker. We've got the word and. We've got the period in Hebrew. So in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then we have three noun clauses. Do you see how this starts with a verb and then you're not having these start with a verb? So it's breaking the grammar slightly. That's telling you that all of this is kind of the same idea. God created, and when God created, this is what you got. The earth was tohu bohu, without form and void. There was hoshek on the faces of the deep, and the ruach Elohim was piel, hovering. So this is a piel participle feminine. The feminine participle is a segulate. Was intensely hovering upon the faces of the waters. And so you see there's this parallelism that will be throughout Genesis 1, on the faces of the deep, on the faces of the waters. So when God created, the result was all of this, kind of a chaotic raw material world that's then going to be turned into order. I think God did that possibly to foreshadow that that's what he's doing with us spiritually, that we're tohu babohu, we're under darkness. This is translated the abyss, and the spirit of Elohim lovingly comes like a mother bird hovering over her brood. That's how this word's used in Deuteronomy. On the face of the waters. And so the world is kind of in this chaotic, dark state after initial creation. And the first thing that happens is God speaks. And you can see when God speaks, things happen. And if this is foreshadowing our salvation, and that's exactly how John 1 is understanding these verses, John 1, 1 to 5. It's exactly how Paul's understanding these verses in 2 Corinthians 4, 6. The same God who spoke light in the darkness is the one who spoke into our lives. So you have this with these three noun clauses. And then we have God said, and as we've pointed out already, this is going to recur 10 times. And so just like the 10 commandments are the 10 words at Mount Sinai, kind of outlining how God wants this relationship governed. He's been really gracious to us, and so this is how he wants the relationship governed. Now we have 10 words of creation with light and then separation of light and darkness. The same way you have 10 plagues that uncreate Egypt. You have 10 words now that create the initial universe. So God said, and then just like you had the 3 noun clauses, you have jussives. God said, let there be or, and the result was, there was or, light. God said, let there be light, and the result was, there was light. And God, Vayar Elohim et Haor, God saw the light. So notice you have the anaphoric use of the definite article. Initially, anarthrous, without the definite article. And then you have a definite article that picks up the thing previously talked about. So God said, let there be light. God saw the light, kitov, that it was a good thing, that the light was good. Now, I don't know if you've ever picked this up before, but what does that say about the Hoshek? If God sees that the light is good, does it imply that the Hoshek is somehow less than good, or that the Choshek, darkness, is only good as it serves to contrast the light? We don't know yet, but we know that the domain of darkness, prince of darkness, sons of darkness, we know that the abyss, all these are negative things elsewhere. And so when God sees that the light, that it's good, that seems significant. Now, notice that this very first verb is in the perfect. And then these are all going to be converted imperfects. So it's like the tense switches. So God created, and an imperfect, you're tempted to say, and Elohim will say, or Elohim kept saying, but when it converts with this vav consecutive, it's treating this as a virtual perfect. Now, we don't really know. I haven't seen really any good explanation of why Semitic languages do this. They do this, and in particular, if we read through the entire Hebrew Bible, we would see that virtually everything from Genesis 1 through 2 Kings follows this narrative form where you have the introduction of a verb and then it's followed by the converted forms. So it makes it clear that this is being treated as historical narrative in terms of the genre. It looks like every other historical narrative text. It's not prophecy. It's not poetry. Believe me, when you start reading poetry, you're in it 5 minutes and you realize, wow, this is really different from what I've been reading in Genesis 1 through 2 Kings. This is narrative, historical narrative. This is a genre. It does have a lot of beauty. It does have a lot of repeated phrases, but these converted imperfects let us know that this is just sequential narrative. So we're going to translate this in God said, and then the two sub phrases, let there be light, and there was light. And we have another converted imperfect, Vayar Elohim, quiescent olive here. If you pick that up from the MP3 reading, Vayar Elohim et Haor, God saw the light, kitov, that it was good. Vayavdeo, hifil, from badal, separate. God, Elohim, caused a separation. It's a separation between two things, between and between. God caused a separation between Haor, and between ha-hoshek, between the light and the darkness. If we did a word study on Badal, this word is almost exclusively used in religious contexts elsewhere. God separating his people from unholy people. God separating the holy place from the Holy of Holies. Or I suppose you should say that, separating the Holy of Holies from just the holy place. Bdellium, we're told manna looks like bdellium. We have no idea what bdellium is, but evidently it was something that separates. And all related to this word. So Badal, very important word. Hifil of Badal caused a separation. Elohim is doing all these things. And Elohim Yikra, with very common in Hebrew to put the verb first and then the subject. And so we have that again here. Elohim calls to the light. And so when you have a conjoined preposition and you want the definite article, the way you do is you lengthen the shva to comments. And so this is to the light. God called to the light Yom. He called the light day. And then you have an inversion here. Do you see how you're saying it and then you're inverting how you say it? This is quite common in prophetic text. You do have that all the time where you'll say it and then you'll invert how you say it. God called to the light day, and to the darkness he called. And notice this isn't a converted imperfect because it's subsumed under this phrase. And he called, and to the darkness he called Layla, night. Then we have another converted imperfect, and there was evening, and there was morning. Vayhi erev, vayhi boker, yom echad, day one. All right. Now we have another in the list of 10. Vayomer Elohim, let there be a rakia. Let the rakia be in the midst of the waters. Let there be, this is a strange word. It's usually violent. Rakah is used of stamping the mud of the street, beating the metal plates flat. When the censors of the rebels under Korah, is it, or Nadab and Abihu, I forget which one, but they're beaten flat on the bronze altar. This is the verb, rakah, that's used. And so you're to think of some violent beating motion. And some people misunderstand that and say, oh, this is talking about a solid dome. No, it's not a solid dome. Just ask yourself, if you're an Israelite in the plains of Moab and there's something violent that happens in the midst of the waters and the result is Yabashah, dry land appears, what event is going to come to your mind? So God is there. Darkness is there, light is there, violence is there. There's a violent splitting of the waters, and dry land appears. What would come to your mind? I doubt that it was an Akkadian text about solid dome. What would come to your mind is the miracle at the Red Sea, where God violently split the waters, and Yabashah, dry land appears. The Ruach Elohim is there. And the people go in the midst of the waters. That's exactly the background of this. And even the word split there in splitting the waters is baka. So this is rakah, and there you have baka. That's perhaps a paranomasia, they call that. All that seems to say that this is, whatever you want to call the rakia, it's the violent smashing, stamping, beating thing that split the waters. And what is that? When we read the whole text, we realize it's the presence of God. That God in the midst of those deadly waters and created salvific space. And we see that same thing happens with Joshua when it's the Ark of the Covenant that splits the waters. And it happens under Elijah when his prophetic mantle splits the waters. Elisha splits the waters. Jesus in his baptism, he creates that salvific space. And when we get in Jesus, his baptism becomes our baptism. And then finally, when the fiery waters in Revelation 15 are split, we go through and we sing the song of Moses because the presence of God has made the place for us. All that related to, in terms of biblical theology, and this rakia. Let there be a rakia in the midst of the waters, and let it be a thing constantly dividing. Even John Walton now admits that the rakia can't be a solid dome because it's a thing that constantly divides between the upper waters and between the lower waters. And so unless the birds are flying through solid bronze, then this rakia, it can't be a solid thing, but it's a smashing thing, a violent thing that has created this salvific space in the midst of waters. And we see that theme in Noah and the ark, and in the Red Sea, and in Elijah, Elisha, in Jesus and his baptism, and ultimately in passing through the fiery crystal sea of Revelation 15. So Elohim, notice converted imperfect again. Elohim made the rakia, another anaphoric use of the definite article. And I think rakia has to be the subject here, and the rakia caused the division, but you could say Elohim caused the division. If it's Elohim, I would have thought it would be repeated, and it is the participle here, the rakia, be a thing making a division. So I'm going to translate it, it caused a division between the waters, which were underneath to the rakia. And so again, here we have the definite article in this comments, to the rakia. It divided between that and between the waters, which were from upon to the rakia, which were on top of the rakia. And we've been looking for the heavenly waters elsewhere. We finally find it in Ezekiel 1, Ezekiel 10, and ultimately those heavenly waters are found in the crystal sea of Revelation 15. And it was so. God said it, and it was so. The same God who said, let me shut this door. Elohim called the rakia Shemayim. What is the rakia? Well, we're told Shemayim. And I don't know what to make of it, but it's not the Shemayim that we have in 1. God created Ha-Shemayim and Ha-Aretz, but now it's just called Shemayim. I don't know what to make of that, but it's interesting. And there was evening and morning, Yom Sheni. Every single translation will translate this day 2 or the second day. You tell me, does the word the appear here? And Sheni is not the cardinal like Yom Ehad, day 1. It's a second day. So why is this not? I don't know, but it's interesting. And Elohim said, let the waters be collected. This is a nifal. It's interesting in Greek that this is translated, let the waters synagogue together. be gathered together from underneath the heavens. Seems like there's something to that. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's interesting. Let them be gathered in, oh my goodness, look at this, Macomb, Mississippi, our word, right? To Macomb Echad, to one place. Now, that tells me that the waters that are being split by the Rakia are uncollected waters initially. I don't know what that means. I know that Revelation 15 seems to describe those waters as on fire. I didn't really know that fire could burn. I'm told by my scientist friends, if you put water under enough pressure, it will burn. Hypercritical water, they call that. I'm not sure, but I noticed that after the split, the waters are collected together to one place, and Yabeshah appears. We do a word study on that. That is the exact word that happens at the Red Sea. I believe it's, again, the exact word that happens at the crossing of the Jordan under Joshua. This word is inviting us to connect this violent splitting of the waters with that miracle in Exodus and then in Joshua, repeated in Kings under Elijah and Elisha. God called to the Yabeshah Eretz. And again, notice it isn't the Eretz. So God created the heavens, the earth. You have the anaphoric use once it's introduced, but the initial one is anarthrous, without the definite article. To the mikveh, to the collection of the waters, he called seas. Again, you have that inversion. Elohim called to the Yabeshah Eretz, and then the inversion to the collection of the waters, he called seas. Vayar Elohim Kitov, and God saw that it was good. Same God who speaks light into creation is the God who said, you are righteous. And your existence on earth is the cosmic microsecond of it being imputed righteousness to the reality of our mystical union in heaven, when that imputed righteousness becomes the totality of who we are because of our union in Christ. May God make it so in our lives today, and I'll see you on Thursday.